Hey everyone, it's Andrew from the Coaster101 podcast. We know your other favorite podcasts probably have the occasional ad read for things like mattresses or meal kits, but this ad is a little different because we're marketing something that we're actually selling. The holiday season is fast approaching, and we wanted to let you know about two gift ideas for the coaster enthusiast in your life. First up is our annual roller coaster calendar. We're selling it on our website right now for $15, and that includes free U.S. shipping. The 2021 calendar features 13 months worth of roller coasters from parks including Kings Island, Cedar Point, and Busch Gardens Tampa. Best of all, we're donating 100% of the net proceeds to Give Kids the World Village in Central Florida. They're a great organization who provides critically ill children and their families with cost-free Orlando vacations, and we love supporting them at Coaster101. You can find the calendar in the show notes on our website at Coaster101.com, or you can find it directly at c101.co/21calendar, or by texting the word calendar to 419-742-2101. We also have a line of Coaster101 and other coaster-related merchandise in our TeePublic shop. From shirts, notebooks, stickers, face masks, you name it, we probably have it. And it's all designed by Coaster101's own Kyle Linder, and I've actually done a few designs there myself. Be sure to check that out at c101.co/shirts or by texting MERCH, MERCH, to 419-742-2101. We really appreciate the support, and with that, here's this week's episode. Welcome back to another episode of the Coaster101 podcast. I'm Andrew Stillwell, joined this week by Shane Joseph. Shane, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm great. We've got no Eric this week because he's decided to devote a little bit more of his time to his other podcast. With Pac-12 football starting up this weekend, it's a good time for him to do that. But if you're a Stanford football fan, be sure to check out Gate 13, which is Eric's other podcast. Maybe he'll be back, maybe he won't. Maybe we fired him. It's fine. But this week, we're going to dive into some real coaster nerd talk. And obviously, if you're listening to this podcast, and we're very glad that you are, please tell your friends to do so. But we're assuming you've got a level of knowledge that when we drop acronyms or manufacturers or terms, that you know what we're talking about. And I know from personal experience, I've got friends who listen to this podcast who, I'll drop a manufacturer or a term, and they'll be like, what was that? So for the people who don't know exactly what we're talking about, we're going to go into volume 1 of our glossary. This may turn into a recurring segment. This is terms you might not know if you're not a coaster enthusiast. And, we're going to start with just some general terms here. And, Shane, I'll let you go ahead and kick it off.
Yeah, sure. So we're going to kick it off with really basic stuff. First is just the term enthusiast, which you probably just heard us say a few times in the intro. And basically, the dictionary definition is a person who is very interested in a particular activity or subject. But specifically when it comes to coaster enthusiasts, it's just somebody that has theme parks or roller coasters specifically as their hobby. They know a lot about it. They like to talk about it. They go to, parks all the time. They know all the stats and details about roller coasters. So most people that listen to the podcast and read our site would probably be called coaster enthusiasts, because just by doing either of those things, it's a pretty good indication of how much you're into the hobby.
And obviously, the term you'll find a lot with enthusiasts is ACE, and ACE is the American Coaster Enthusiast. Basically, if it is one of multiple roller coaster clubs in the United States and enthusiasts have interest, they establish clubs to find like-minded people for their interests. But ACE is founded in 1978, and according to Google, it's got over 5,000 members. They do multiple events. They've got chapters around the country. I know I am a member of the ACE Southeast region, which covers Georgia and South Carolina, North Carolina. Not as much Virginia. I think I'm kind of a member of the ACE Mid-Atlantic too. I'm a card-carrying ACE member. But yeah, ACE people will talk about ACE. There are other coaster enthusiast groups out there. I know there's the European Coaster Club and the Roller Coaster Enthusiasts of Great Britain and the Great Ohio Coaster Club. I could keep listing on and on and on, but there are coaster enthusiast groups out there.
Yeah, for sure.
And another thing roller coaster enthusiasts like to talk about is referring to roller coasters as credits. Each roller coaster they ride is its own credit, and it's kind of a talk in the enthusiast community of kind of what gives an enthusiast their clout. Obviously, if you've ridden more coasters, there is a kind of a, I don't want to say a stigma, but there is
a stigma. You can say it.
Okay. But, you know, the more coasters you've ridden, the higher your credit count is. And with your credit count, there are a number of things that people count or choose not to count in their credit count. If it's a powered coaster, some people won't count coasters that are at carnivals or at fairs. They won't count mobile coasters, so they won't count coasters like the new, like the Bolt coaster on the Carnival cruise ship, things like Skywarps from Skyline Attractions, mountain coasters, powered coasters, etc.
So what do you think, Andrew? What do you count as a credit?
I'm a firm believer in the actual, a coaster is in one place. So even if it's a family entertainment center, place like a Scene 75 in Ohio, I know when a couple of the Coaster101 guys came down here last November, we went to this place called Funtastics, just outside of Carowinds, and they've got a little coaster there called Minor Mike, and that's a really popular kiddie coaster. There's another story attached to that Minor Mike trip, but that's another story for another day. But I think as far as, you know, there are people who count mountain coasters, and I probably would if I had been on a mountain coaster at this point, but yeah, I think just a permanent installation is kind of what I tend to.
Okay.
What about you? Are you just anything counts?
No, kind of the opposite. I'm kind of a stickler. I don't count mountain coasters personally. I do count like duplicates. Some people don't do that. So like if somebody like boomerangs are all over the place, some people don't count those as multiple. I do, just because I think if it's even if it's the exact same thing, if it's a different coaster in a different park, I count that. Dueling coasters, I also count as two. Some people count those only as one because it's only one name. Like something like Lightning Racer at Hershey Park is technically two completely different coasters. Some people count it as one. I count it as two because, again, it's two different tracks, in my opinion. But, you know, pretty much every enthusiast that you'll talk to will have a little bit different definition. So it just depends on what you consider a credit and how that will go into your credit count.
I think it depends on how much it inflates their credit, personally.
Yeah, that too.
Another acronym you will probably hear thrown around at an enthusiast event is ERT. And ERT stands for Exclusive Ride Time. Typically ride time that happens before or after the park opens, a very small, limited group of people. And you'll get your ability to, quote-unquote, marathon a coaster if you want to during a lot of ERT sessions. I know there are coaster enthusiast events like Hollywood Nights at Holiday World. They're known for their nighttime ERT. So, Shane, have you ever been on any or ever participated in any ERT sessions?
I actually don't think I have. I'm not a member of like any coaster clubs like ACE or anything like that. So I don't know if I've even had the opportunity to do ERT, but luckily I haven't needed to. But basically, yeah, so ERT, like you said, it comes with usually a specific like ticketed event that you have to pay extra for, and then they'll close the ride down except for people that have tickets to that event. So since I've never really done anything like that, I haven't done it personally, but as an ACE member, have you been able to marathon something, which is basically just ride it over and over?
I haven't. It wasn't actually an ACE event, but I did. Give Kids the World used to do coasting for kids at Cedar Fair Parks, and there was some ERT at Carowinds the year that Fury 325 opened, and we had some exclusive ride time on Fury. And after 4 consecutive rides on Fury, I was like, I gotta take it easy. I know this is a very smooth and enjoyable coaster, and I love Fury, as evidenced by past episodes of this podcast, but I needed a little break. It was perfect.
Well, that's great. So the next term here we have is GP, which is kind of an interesting term in the community. And it stands for general public, which is essentially anyone who is not an enthusiast. So basically, if you're learning these terms for the first time, you would probably be classified as general public. I personally, I don't know how you feel about this. I actually don't like this term, Andrew. I think it's a little bit, discriminatory, exclusionary. But again, it comes with the territory. It's just in conversation when you're talking about these types of things. But do you hear this used a lot?
I've heard it used, and I'll go back to the Worlds of Fun video that came out late last year that I made a cameo in. It was things coaster enthusiasts say, and depending on the enthusiast you're around, they will throw the term GP around, and it is kind of like you said, it's a little discriminatory. Obviously, I know we're all at the theme park to have a good time, and just because somebody doesn't know the year a roller coaster opened and the G's that it pulls on its third inversion doesn't make him any less of a fan, in my opinion. But
I agree.
It's not something I really throw around, but I have heard it before, and it's always funny when I hear it.
Yeah, it's definitely very common.
Next term on this list is something that has happened to me multiple times as a individual with a larger body dimension. It is taking the quote-unquote walk of shame, and it's when you don't fit in a roller coaster for whatever reason. I know if it's the belt's too short or the restraint doesn't happen to fit over your body, the roller coaster can't safely operate with you sitting in it, and so you're asked to kind of leave the station while everybody else on the train who's getting ready to ride kind of looks at you and are like, is this guy serious? Why didn't he use the test seat? Again, it's happened a few times. It's notorious for me on those Intamin impulse coasters like the Wicked Twister and Possessed. I have yet to get on one of those just because I think it has something to do with the way the restraint kind of clicks on the side. Yeah, well, I've been walk ashamed a couple of times. There's no shame in it. There's really no arguing it. You can't be like, hey, why can't I fit on this ride? And it's typically a personal problem, but if you just accept it and be like, people are doing their job, don't yell at ride ops because you don't fit. That's my bottom line there.
It's good advice.
Then we've got another acronym, a couple of acronyms actually. This is FROTD and LROTN. And these are actually came to us via Facebook or Twitter. We were asking about terms that you have to explain to your non-coaster enthusiast friends this week. And FROTD is first ride of the day. The opposite of that, LROTN, is last ride of the night. Obviously, I love a good LROTN. This is something I would never actually say in this regard.
That's why it's funny, because nobody, I've seen these a few times. Like, if somebody's, writing it online, on an Instagram post, they post a picture of something, and then they use that acronym, I got the last ride of the night on whatever ride. But I personally have never had it used in conversation. But it is something that you'll see a lot online. A lot of people will see it as almost like an achievement. If they're at a park for the first time or it's a ride they really like, they'll say, oh, I'm going to try and get the last ride of the night on whatever it is. Usually it's because a lot of enthusiasts prefer to get night rides on attractions because it's a different experience at night during the day. But this is certainly not something I throw around often, but I've certainly seen it used.
Last ride of the night on Beast is allegedly very good. I haven't gotten the last ride on Beast. I did actually end up the last ride of the night on Test Track, a trip to Disney World a while ago. But that was one of those I just kind of ran into the queue at 9:59 and 38 seconds, and they shut the door right behind me.
That's what happened to me at also at Disney. I got the last ride of the night on the Haunted Mansion, which was really fun because it was whatever the, not ERT, but specific, if you were staying at a hotel. Oh, I guess it would be ERT, I guess. If you're staying at a hotel, you get a few extra hours. So it was like 11:59 at night, and I had just gotten in line. I was the last person on that ride for the day, which was kind of spooky, but a cool milestone certainly to have that. So,
and then a ghost followed you home. Another acronym, SBNO, and this is something if you visited the website RCDB, which is an acronym in its own right for Roller Coaster Database, you will see that the classification of some roller coasters is standing but not operating, which is SBNO. Roller coasters, for whatever reason, I'll use the wooden roller coaster Mega Zeph at Six Flags New Orleans. Six Flags New Orleans hasn't opened since Hurricane Katrina. However, the wooden roller coaster there, Mega Zeph, is still standing. It has not been demolished for whatever reason. I feel like a lot of that park is actually still standing, but it is not operating. So that is standing but not operating.
It's also like for something temporary too. Like if a park opens at the beginning of the year and the coaster is not ready yet, it's standing but not operating. So that doesn't always mean like defunct, which is another term meaning never will open again. But yeah, SBNO means for whatever reason that ride is not going to be operating for a good chunk of time.
And another term that enthusiasts like to throw around a lot is Zen ride. This is when you have a solo ride on a roller coaster for whatever reason. If happens to be an ERT, I know, like I mentioned, Hollywood Nights, they auction off Zen rides on Voyage and things like that. But Shane, have you ever had a solo Zen ride?
You know, I actually have, and I did not really like it that much. It was at Dorney Park. I visited last summer, which is the only park I've ever visited alone, and I probably won't do it again because it wasn't very enjoyable. I think a lot of the fun of going to a theme park and riding rides is that you're with your family, friends, whoever that you can enjoy it with. But yeah, so I went on Talon, which is an inverted coaster, which means the car is beneath the track. So yeah, I went on that. It was after like a parade event, so nobody had really gone over there yet, and I was the first one in, so I got a Zen ride in the back row, which is fine. It was fun, but then when I got pulled back into the station, there were like people waiting, and it was just really weird because I was like alone in the back row of this ride with nobody else on it, and it was very awkward. So yeah, during the Zen ride was fine, but not a great enjoyable experience when I got back to the station. But it's just not my cup of tea. Some people really like it, so you know.
I enjoy it. I've had two that come to mind. I was at Six Flags America a couple of years ago, and then the ride went down for maintenance. It got stuck in the brakes, and they emptied the queue, and they said you can wait if you want to. And I said, okay, well, they're just going to unlock this train, and they're going to cycle it through a couple of times. So I waited, and I was waiting in the front row, and honestly, I was there. There's only 6 or 7 roller coasters at Six Flags America anyway. And for those listening who don't know where Six Flags America is, in between Baltimore and D.C. But this Joker's Jinx, it came around, and I was the only one in the station, except for 2 other guys who were waiting for the front row. So I jumped in there. I got my solo ride on Joker's Jinx, and yeah, I lived to tell the tale. And then the only other time that I can think of that this has happened was Blue Streak at Cedar Point. I was there for Coaster Mania a couple years ago, and we had nighttime ERT, and I got a solo ride in the front row of Blue Streak. So everyone else was trying to ride Gatekeeper and Valraven and things like that. I'm like, there's nobody in line for Blue Streak. I might as well go while I'm here.
Got to get those credits.
That's right, absolutely.
Like we just said.
And the last kind of enthusiast term that we want to cover before we jump into some elements and ride types and ride parts is walkback. And that's typically another thing that happens at enthusiast events. It's an opportunity to go back into an area where guests aren't typically allowed. And at these walkbacks, you will see a lot of roller coaster nerds with cameras, with phones. They've all got their DSLR cameras, their fancy iPhones, and they're all taking the same angle and the same photo. I say this because I am one of these people. I'm not shaming. I am with you. I agree. It is a great place to get some photos.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So, have you ever what is your most memorable experience? Like, what's the coolest ride that you've gotten to walk back on?
So, when we went to a Coaster Buzz event at Holiday World, and this was the first time any of the Coaster101 team had gotten together. Kind of, no offense, back before you were on the team, but several of us went to Holiday World, and they had scheduled a photo walk back for Thunderbird, their launched wing coaster, which was new that year, and we had some ERT on Thunderbird that morning, and we were like the last people on it before a part went down, and it was down most of the day. So we got to go even further back on our walk back to some areas like where you could get right up close with the track, and then we got into the station, and I've got a photo that was in an old Coaster101 calendar that you got right up to the launch track, and I put my camera on the rail and shot straight towards the first kind of Immelman inversion there, and that's one of my favorite pictures I've ever taken.
That's awesome.
So we're going to transition right now into some elements of roller coasters and some different things, but the first thing we're going to talk about is airtime. Every coaster enthusiast I've ever talked to appreciates airtime, and there's a couple of different kinds. There's ejector, where you're more, not violently, but you're thrown from your seat. But then there's floater, where you have like a sustained period of that negative gravity where you kind of feel like you're, quote unquote, floating. That's why they call it floater airtime. They've also got some laterals, which is your motion side to side. It all has to do with the gravitational force and the train's path and all that. But, if people say those laterals were awesome, it means the side-to-side motion that you felt in your seat was an enjoyable experience. And another airtime thing would be hang time. And I have friends of mine, the guys actually with Ulimi who created our text code. They listened to one of our first episodes, and I mentioned the hang time, and they kind of razzed me a little bit for the my love of hang time, but especially on roller coasters like Copperhead Strike, and I'm sure it exists elsewhere, that feeling where you have like a sustained, you're upside down, and you have a sustained bit of just like, I'm not in my seat. This is it's very interesting. So that's
so next, the next category is inversions. Which is where you would get that hang time if you're upside down. But so inversions are essentially any element that will turn the train upside down. So there's a few different types of inversions. The first one is called a vertical loop, and this is the one that most people think of when you think loop on a roller coaster. You're probably thinking of a vertical loop. This was the first type of inversion, dates way back to the 1800s. Also, most famously, on the Great American Revolution at Six Flags Magic Mountain. That was the first modern vertical loop, I should say, yeah. And the vertical loops that are being built nowadays are more of a upside-down teardrop shape because circular, like the straight-up circle loops, are not as comfortable. They put a lot of uncomfortable forces, so teardrop is pretty much what's been universally accepted now as the vertical loop that most rides use. There's also a corkscrew, which is sort of, if you took both ends of the vertical loop and just stretch them out, that's what a corkscrew is. It started at Knott's Berry Farm, which is now at Silverwood. This corkscrew coaster opened up in the early 1970s. That's a pretty common inversion. There's also a few models like the one at Cedar Point where there's like 2 or 3 corkscrews in a row that you'll see that. Sometimes they'll have areas that you'll walk under, like the pass will go under, which is pretty cool. Then the next type is a cobra roll or a bat wing on an inverted coaster. And what this is basically 2 half loops connected by half corkscrews. Most famously on the Incredible Hulk coaster at Universal. If you've been to Universal, you know what this looks like. If you just picture the Incredible Hulk coaster, you're probably picturing that cobra roll. It's where you go upside down, then when you're halfway up, you straighten out, and then go upside down the other way. And then a batwing is basically the opposite of that. So you start by going upside down, then level out and go upside down the other direction, usually on inverted coasters like Montu at Busch Gardens. Tampa has a pretty famous batwing. The next element is a little more rare. There's only 2 that I know of. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, Andrew, but this is called the JoJo roll. One of them is at Dorney Park on... why am I blanking on the name? Hydra. I love that ride. I don't know why I forgot it. Yeah, so the other one is Copperhead Strike, like you just mentioned, at Carowinds. And a JoJo roll is a very slow upside-down roll when you first go out of the station. So before you even get to the lift hill or the launch, immediately as you roll out of the station, you do a slow turn upside down, and that's called a JoJo roll. It's actually named after a guy named Joe Green, who was the head of construction at Dorney Park on Hydra when they were building that, so they named it after him. These are really cool. You'll get some great hang time on the JoJo roll because it's so slow. You're being held upside down. The next type is called an Immelman, or dive loop, which is similar. This, I believe, is named after a fighter pilot because the way that this is done, if you watch a movie like Top Gun or something, this is where you start out and then you go like halfway upside down and then you level out at the top of that. So imagine like a vertical loop, except halfway you straighten out and then do the rest of it like normal. So some famous Immelmans, like you just said, on Thunderbird at Holiday World is a pretty famous one. Some B&M floorless coasters and
dive coasters,
inverted coasters, dive coasters. Yep, those are pretty popular. And then
the next thing we're talking about is it's what's called a head chopper, and this is found a lot on wooden coasters, but also some steel coasters. It's when you're going on a drop and there is kind of the psychological feeling where you're going into a space where you think if you have your arms up, you have the feeling like they might take your arms off, might chop your head off. Obviously, it is safe, but there are roller coasters out there. Invader at Busch Gardens Williamsburg has a really good head chopper on its first drop.
Mm-hmm. Space Mountain also has a ton.
Those actually might get your head. I don't know.
Yeah, though, be careful putting your arms up on Space Mountain. But yeah, those are called head choppers.
And we'll go into restraints now, just a real quick run through. When you hear the phrase or the acronym OTSR, that stands for over-the-shoulder restraints, that's a pretty traditional restraint. You think about it a lot on kind of classic steel coasters. You get into the train, you pull the thing over your head, and sometimes you strap it in with a seatbelt. Other times it's just there. With a restraint, if you're stapled in too tight or very tight, again, something that's happened to me a lot as a larger individual. It's known as stapling. So if somebody says, I was stapled into that ride, that's exactly what it means.
Enthusiasts hate
this, but other enthusiasts sometimes need it in order to get into a ride. A couple other clamshell restraints. They're found on B&M hypercoasters, and it's just a lap bar, so you kind of have this open air feeling when you're riding. And buzz bars, which are actually on wooden coasters. They're single-position lap bars, and they allegedly give you more airtime. I can't really speak to the amount of airtime.
I would say so. I think so. It's a lot harder to get stapled with you have the buzz bar because there's usually some space in between your lap and the actual bar, which if you want airtime, buzz bars are good, and stapling is pretty much the opposite of airtime because you're not going to get any if you're stapled into the seat.
And we're going to transition now into some roller coaster manufacturers and people. We've said it before on this podcast and continue to say it, but if you hear B&M, it stands for Bolliger and Mabillard. They are Swiss ride designers who were founded in 1988. They've built 120 coasters as of this recording, and they include Fury 325, Afterburn Intimidator at Carowinds, Orion, Banshee, and Diamondback at Kings Island, and Apollo's Chariot.
Incredible Hulk, I would say, is the most. If you know nothing about coasters, that's probably
true.
The most famous.
That's a good
B&M.
one. And then Apollo's Chariot, Alpengeist, and Griffin at Busch Gardens Williamsburg. Another acronym that a lot of coaster enthusiasts love to throw around as both a noun and a verb is RMC, and that stands for Rocky Mountain Construction. They're a company located in Idaho, founded in 2001. And they're known primarily for their conversions of former wooden coasters into hybrid coasters. They've also done some ground-up construction. But their conversions that they're probably best known for are Steel Vengeance at Cedar Point, formerly Mean Streak, Iron Gwazi at Busch Gardens Tampa, which will be opening next year. Also, it was just known as Gwazi back in the day. Storm Chaser at Kentucky Kingdom, Twisted Timbers at King's Dominion, and New Texas Giant at Six Flags Over Texas. RMC also is known for their Raptor tracks, or is becoming known for their Raptor tracks, I should say. It's a single rail with one rider per car with a, kind of in a bobsled formation. It's known for its kind of aerial style maneuvers, and some examples of this are Railblazer at California's Great America, Wonder Woman Golden Lasso at Six Flags Fiesta Texas in San Antonio, and then the new ones for 2021, Stunt Pilot at Silverwood in Idaho, and the Jersey Devil coaster at Six Flags Great Adventure New Jersey. And Shane, I know you're really excited about Jersey Devil.
I am very excited about Jersey Devil. I also think it's worth mentioning that basically, so we said conversions. What that means is if there's a rickety old wooden coaster, and it gets RMC'd, which is the verb version of that. Essentially, the company will come in and put steel track on the wooden frame. So that means they'll take out all the wooden track and replace it, usually in a different way, adding a lot of elements, especially inversions, which is cool because the coaster still rides like a wooden coaster, but it's able to do all these fun maneuvers like go upside down or have more aggressive airtime. So that's what RMC is mostly known for. When parks redo old coasters, they'll RMC it and put steel track on the wood supports.
Some more acronyms as far as wooden coasters are concerned would be GCI, which is Great Coasters International, and CCI, Custom Coasters International. GCI, Great Coasters, still in business today, just celebrated their 25th anniversary last year. Probably best known for Mystic Timbers at Kings Island, Gold Striker at California's Great America, and Prowler at Worlds of Fun. GCI, some of the best wooden roller, or I would say, yeah, they're the best wooden roller coaster manufacturer out there, in my opinion. My apologies to anybody out there who is a Gravity Group fan. But I think GCI has put out some true classics in the last couple years, and even their smaller coasters like Invader at Busch Gardens Williamsburg and White Lightning at Fun Spot are incredibly fun rides. CCI, on the other hand, they're defunct. They're no longer in business. Their first coaster was in 1992. Only lasted for about 10 years, but some of their hits include Raven and Legend at Holiday World, Rampage at Alabama Adventure, Cornball Express, and Hoosier Hurricane, which are both at Indiana Beach. There's some good CCI coasters. They're becoming more and more of kind of a dying breed, I would say.
CCI, pretty common for RMC conversions. A lot of those are on CCIs.
Yes. And another classic manufacturer who is no longer with us actually went defunct in 2002 is Aerodynamics. And if you've seen a classic steel roller coaster like Loch Ness Monster at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, Carolina Cyclone at Carowinds, you know this type of coaster. It's I don't want to call it janky, but it definitely has that classic roller coaster feel to it, and it has, Aero was the first people to do the steel tubular track. And so Space Mountain was an Aero design. Matterhorn Bobsled was an Aero design. And they had their moments, probably culminating with X2 at Six Flags Magic Mountain, back when it was X. But yeah, Shane, what do you think about Aeros?
I'm not a big fan of Aeros in particular. I think a lot of them are very rough. They're certainly classic. However, I don't think they're the most comfortable because they have, like we just said, those over-the-shoulder restraints, which are very, hard on your ears if you're banging into those. A lot of Aeros have those. And the track, the transitions just aren't very good in my opinion. So I think they're pretty rough, but a lot of enthusiasts like that. They like that it's a little more janky and throws you around a little bit. It's not really to my liking personally. Not the kind of rough that I enjoy on a coaster. But I think you're a fan, though.
They're okay. If you get the right Aero, Tennessee Tornado comes to mind. But I'm not the world's biggest Aero fan. But if we want to talk about painful, as you just mentioned, I feel like that's a good transition into Vekoma. At least the classic Vekomas. I know they're doing some really good things. Now they are.
Yeah.
But Vekoma is a company, and they did an off-the-shelf model for many years. It was a staple at Six Flags parks, and it is maybe the most hated model in the enthusiast community, which is the SLC, stands for Suspended Looping Coaster. And
probably named Mind Eraser. If you've ever encountered these, most of them at Six Flags parks are named Mind Eraser.
Also, T3 at Kentucky Kingdom is an SLC designed by Vekoma. They've got different restraints than a lot of the other SLCs do, which makes a slightly more enjoyable ride. But again, I think, they're getting better. They just did Fly at Phantasialand in Europe.
Yes.
So maybe we're getting the resurgence of Vekoma right now, which is good.
I hope so. I'm excited. They also have, if you've seen a boomerang coaster there, that's made by Vekoma, where it goes forwards and backwards in the same layout.
Yes.
That's a Vekoma.
And we're going to name one person on this countdown of sorts, and that is Alan Shoki. And Alan Shoki is a roller coaster designer. He worked for Arrow. He did Tennessee Tornado and X2, kind of some of Arrow's last couple of coasters. He did some designs for SNS with the El Loco at Indiana Beach Steel Hog. But more recently, he is known for his designs with Rocky Mountain Construction. So if there's an RMC that has been built, there's a good chance that Alan Shoki has had a hand in it. And for this reason, he is put on a pedestal in the enthusiast community, and this deservedly so, as RMCs are some of the most innovative attractions out there. And I mean, even X2 at the time was one of the most innovative attractions in the early 2000s.
Still is, really.
I haven't been out there. I have not ridden it. So in Shoki we trust. But I think that'll do it actually this week. We've talked your ear off. For the coaster enthusiasts who are still listening, we're sorry for repeating a bunch of information that you already know. But for any quote-unquote GP who have found this podcast, maybe by accident, maybe because a friend has forced you to listen to it, maybe because you went to college with me and you just like listening to my podcast, hopefully you got a little bit of a lesson, a little bit of education without being too boring. But if you are listening to this podcast and you're not subscribed, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you consume your podcast. That really helps us out, helps people find the show. Be sure to check out our website, which is Coaster101.com, and you can find us anywhere you get your social media: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube, TikTok, probably some social networks that don't even exist right now. We're going to be on them at Coaster101, and if you've got questions about our glossary or want to add some terms of your own, feel free to drop us an email at podcast@Coaster101.com. Thanks, as always, to JM Music Design for our theme music, and Ulimi for our text code. I know we didn't really throw out any 419-742-2101 texts in this episode, but we'll do it again soon. Shane, anything else you want to add?
No, nothing specific. That's all I got. So we'll talk to you guys next week.
See ya.